Okay.
So my name's Rich McCue. I work at the University of Victoria, just north of Seattle. And this is a picture of our campus. We're about 75 miles northwest of Seattle. And Vancouver, British Columbia is about 75 miles to the northeast of us. So it makes a nice little triangle there. I work in the law library. And I'm the systems administrator, but this isn't our server room as nice as it looks. I wish it was. It's very impressive looking. Anyways, as you probably saw from this morning, I have a wife, 5 children, and a dog. And we have many mobile devices at our house, as you might guess. My oldest child is 16, the youngest is 7, and they're all very familiar with computers and mobile devices, as you might guess. So at home, I support the following mobile devices. We got 2 iPhones, 3 iPod Touches, we have a BlackBerry, 2 LG feature phones, and 1 iPad. I'm hoping to make that 2 after the draw on Saturday, but we'll see how that goes. So you could say that when it comes to mobile technology, and technology in general, that I'm quite ecumenical. I try to pick the best tool for the job. It doesn't matter, whether it be Apple or Linux or Microsoft. Most recently at work, there we go. I've been developing a mobile web app for the main library at our university. I've also been dabbling a little bit in native mobile app development. So, why would an organization consider a mobile web app over a native app? There's a few reasons why. The first one would be time. The amount of time it typically takes to develop a mobile web app is quite a bit less than a native app. And that has to do with the technologies involved. A mobile web app is HTML5 and JavaScript. And I suspect that if you had two equally talented developers and you asked one to develop a native web app, or a web app, and the other a native app, the web app developer would probably have his done in a half to a third of the time, just because of the ease of use in programming. The second reason why you'd probably want to consider a web app is the skill sets needed to develop. Again, HTML5 and JavaScript are probably technologies that your web developer that you have on staff is very familiar with. So it would be an easy transition going from a regular website to a mobile website. There are tools like Objective-C, which is for native apps, which is quite a bit more time-consuming to develop in if you have the skill set already. And for the Android, you've got Java that you'd end up developing in, which again, just takes longer to develop an application. The third reason why you'd want to consider a mobile web app are app store fees and wait times. For the Apple Store, for an individual developer, I think it's $100 a year to be part of that. For an organization, it's about $300 a year, which isn't too bad. But one thing to keep in mind is if you're submitting an app to the Apple Store, the current wait time is about 6 to 9 days. So you press the submit button for the App Store, the Apple App Store, and it'll be a week to a week and a half later before it'll actually appear ready to download, which isn't too bad. The problem tends to occur when you find a serious bug in your app that's causing problems. You fix the bug quickly. You submit it to the App Store again, but again, it's going to take the week and a week and a half. So, whereas the web app, you fix your bug, you hit save, upload it to your web server, and it's fixed immediately for all of your clients. The fourth reason is web apps are cross-platform. Not quite write once, run everywhere, but pretty close to it. Most modern mobile devices use the WebKit web browser, so that's the primary target. And you can get a lot of nifty features, transitions, dialog boxes popping up, nice things that make it look like a native app happening in a WebKit web browser. There are some other browsers used in mobile devices. For example, Windows 7 doesn't use WebKit, and older BlackBerries actually all BlackBerries except for their new tablet use another browser, not as capable as WebKit. But on our website, 95% of the browsers connecting use a WebKit browser. And this is the market share that we're currently seeing, or that I'm currently seeing on one of the websites that I manage. 41% iPhone, 25% iPad, 7% iPod, and 26% Android. And lastly, ease of initial access. If you're doing a mobile website, simply give them the shortest URL you can possibly get your hands on, and they have access immediately to it. So the other thing that you can do as well, so that you're taking up some real estate on their home page on their mobile device, you can prompt them to install the web app on their computer, which it really isn't installing the web app. It's putting a shortcut or an icon on their screen so that they'll go directly to it. And it typically removes the forward-back functionality, so you need to have that in mind when you're developing it. But it makes it really look like more of an application rather than just a web page that they're going to. And we'll, yep. So you can, using a little bit of JavaScript that Google gives away for free, you can have a little thing pop up when they go to your mobile web app, and they can add an icon to their home screen, so that your web page will actually launch like an app, and it won't have the forward-back arrow buttons of your web browser. It'll be just stripped of that, so it looks like an application for someone who really isn't familiar with web apps or how applications work. And that's something that Google does with YouTube, for example. And lastly, the web app and the information therein is searchable via Google and other search engines. So if you do want it to be publicly available and searchable, using a web app is probably the easiest way to do that. So just a summary of the reasons why you'd want to consider a web app would be faster development and release, leverage existing skill sets, no app store wait times or costs, cross-platform, easy initial access, and searchable and discoverable via the web. So given all those reasons, why would anyone consider a native app? Well, there are a few good reasons why you'd want to. This is the MIT native app. And they developed this app after they developed their mobile website, because the mobile website will run on almost anything that can connect to the internet. So usually most institutions don't just have a mobile app. They'll go with the mobile website first and then have a mobile app later. And probably the number one reason that most people would cite for having a native app over a web app would be speed. Probably isn't a big deal unless you're gaming, the speed part of it. I like to game a little bit, so I can understand that. But most of the apps that educational institutions are developing typically are accessing data over the internet anyways. So whether that happens through a native app or through a web app, you're still going to have a little bit of a lag because of data access over the internet, whether that be Wi-Fi or cell phone data. The ESPN Sports Center application is an excellent example of this. I love to use it to check out sports scores. And it is a native app, but it's a little bit slow just because it's pulling down the most recent information from the web server. So the second reason why you might want to develop a native app would be the ability to integrate richer features into your application. For example, augmented reality doesn't work in a web browser. You don't have access to the camera. So if you wanted to do some sort of a tour of your library where they can sort of scroll around and tell what's in front of them, you're going to have to use a native app for that. You can't do that in a web browser. You can access the GPS in your web browser, so that would work, but the camera would not. The third reason would be the ability to have a QR code reader built into your app, and this is probably the one that's most tantalizing to me. I think there is a lot of a lot of room for use of QR codes, especially in libraries, but other places in the law school. And being able to have a QR code reader built in would be great. And that's actually one of the few differences between the MIT mobile web app and their native app, is the inclusion of a QR code reader, which you probably can't see, but the little red circle there is highlighting their QR code reader that they built into their native app. Another reason for a native app would be the ability to access resources offline, or to be able to launch the application offline. Not a big deal for most applications that you'd use at an educational institution, because you're probably downloading real-time data, but I do find it handy when I'm in the United States, because my data plan is pretty much cut off at the border unless I want to spend hundreds of dollars. So when I'm using an application like TripIt, I appreciate the fact that I can access my trip information without connecting to the internet. But probably for most of the applications that we'd be using it for, that's not a big deal. The fifth one would be notifications and badges. So here you can see a notification, something popping up to let them know that something's happened, something new is available. And it's probably difficult for you to see, but just above that there's a number 1 on the icon on the desktop. That's just another indication that there's something waiting for them that they've typically requested to see. So you could push out notifications to people. Like their library book is overdue, or their parking fines are going to double unless they pay them soon, things like that. And lastly, native apps can integrate with the device's contacts and calendar data, typically, which you might be interested in using. The only time that I've actually really seen an integration with the contacts is the Facebook application that allows you to, or at least it used to allow you to synchronize data from Facebook into your local contacts, which could be useful for some people. So again, just a quick summary. Application speed, especially graphics, access to camera and GPS, QR code reader is a possibility, offline use, notifications and badges, and then integration with contacts and calendar. Yeah.
And also recording audio?
Yeah, that's true.
Would that be true as well?
Yeah, that would be true as well. And actually, I'll go into a few frameworks for developing native apps, and we'll talk about that a little bit more there. But I should have included that. Thanks for pointing that out. Is there any other questions or comments? Yeah. Yeah. No, that's an excellent point. Being able to link to phone numbers as well as text messaging. I know our librarians want to offer SMS reference. And that's another thing that you can do easily in both of them. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, yeah. So, clear as mud. Which path should we take? Well, it's not going to be the same for everyone. So I'm going to go over a few keys. They'll hopefully help you make a decision if you're trying to decide which way to go. And the first thing that you should probably do is determine which informations and services you want to offer on your mobile website, because it's not necessarily going to be the same as your full-blown website. There are things that people typically want to access on their phone that they may not typically access through their web browser on their laptop, and vice versa. So you want to identify those things. So news is one of the things that people, it's easy for them to access and they'd like to access on their mobile device. Hours of operation, especially for library and different services in your library, letting them know when things open and close can be helpful. Contact information, so if they're on their device and they want to send a message to the reference desk or contact someone or give them a call, it's actually probably easier for them to just go to your website, click on it like you said, and have it dial the number for them than trying to punch in the number on their device. One big one that we've found is study room availability and booking. If someone's near the end of their class and they know that they need to do some group study, being able to just pick up their phone, find out what room's available, and then book it before they leave their class is something that's extremely popular with our students. Library catalog, just being able to figure out what books are available without running to an OPAC or firing up their laptop. Calendar information, class information, maps of the campus they can access on the go, as well as paying library fines and parking tickets. So the second thing you probably want to take into account when trying to figure out mobile or doing a website or an app would be your budget. If you got lots of money and lots of time, you can do anything you want, of course. If you have a little bit of money and a little bit of time, you probably want to take a hard look at doing a mobile web app initially, just because the time that it's going to take and the money that it's going to take is probably going to be quite a bit less. If you have someone in-house who's, who develops native apps, that might change the equation for you, of course. So inventory the skill set of your current employees. Find out if there is someone who's developing some native apps on the side, and that could impact your decision-making process. If you do want to develop a native app, you're probably going to be looking at adding Objective-C and Java to a job description next time you do some hiring. And the fourth thing would be to get stats on your website. Find out what types of apps are currently hitting your website. In our case, it was pretty clear that Apple devices are the predominant device. So if we were developing native apps, we'd hit the iPhone first and then probably Android second. And in the case of MIT, that's exactly what they did. They did the mobile web first, they did iPhone, and just recently they pushed out an Android app. So knowing what your students are using would be a big help in that. And in the case of our main library's website, the iPhone is 41%, iPad 32%, iPod 12%, and then Android about 10%. And Google Analytics will also give you what web browsers are connecting to. So there is a little bit of variation in mobile web browsers in terms of their capabilities. So we can see that Safari and Android make up over 90% of the browsers, and they both use WebKit. So that we know WebKit is our primary target for developing for. So fifth would be to identify the frameworks and toolkits to help you make development easier. So you're not starting from scratch, because there are a number of open source frameworks and toolkits you can use to get you, up and running a lot quicker than building from scratch. So again, just a quick summary of considerations as you're making your planning would be what information or services do you want to deliver? How much time and money do you have? What skills do your current employees have? Identify frameworks and tools you could use. Now, first, look at some mobile web frameworks that have been built specifically for education. And this is what we did at the University of Victoria, and it was amazing how quickly we could get something up and running without contracting out or trying to build things from scratch. And the first one I'll talk about just briefly is Moto Labs' Kurgo framework, which is a fork of the MIT mobile framework. It seems like all of the staff that worked on the MIT mobile framework, as soon as they knew they had something hot, they went out and set up their own company, which is the Moto Labs. And they're still pushing out it as an open source project and giving it away for free. It uses PHP. It has built-in LDAP, hooks for LDAP, so that you can just plug in your LDAP credentials and get directory information up and running very quickly. For news, it has built-in RSS. That's probably the easiest thing to do, is just get your RSS feed for your news for your organization, plug it into a field in the config file, and voila, you've got your news module done in probably about 2 minutes. And it also has mapping built in. So if you wanted to do a map of key locations on your campus, again, you just get the GPS coordinates for each of the places, put in a little bit of information about them, and your mapping is done for you without doing any heavy lifting or programming in JavaScript to interface with Google Maps, for example. Another one you could consider is Molly, and it was created by a consortia of UK universities, including the University of Oxford. It's based on Python, if any of you are into programming in Python. If Ben Chapman was here, he'd have a big smile on his face. He's big into Python. And it's got connections for LDAP, for directory information, Z3950, which is a library protocol, Google Search, OpenStreetMap, and if you happen to be from England, you've got great infrastructure for bus, rail, and tube information. Another framework that's quite a bit newer but seems to have quite a bit of momentum is the UCLA Mobile Web Framework. It currently has built-in plugins for news and mapping, and as I said, they seem to be doing a lot of work on it, so I'd be surprised if there weren't other modules and plugins built for it soon. But as you look at the different products, that's one you'd want to keep in mind. Another one is the Mobile Web OSP Framework, and it's a fork of the MIT project, and this is actually the one that we're using at the University of Victoria. And it works quite well. I think it was developed out of the University of West Virginia, somewhere in Virginia anyways. It uses PHP and JavaScript. Again, it supports LDAP, RSS, and mapping. And I suspect that in a year or two, when we are looking to refresh our mobile site, we'll probably take a look at the other frameworks at that point and see who has more momentum. The other MIT-based project seems to have a little, more people using it and a bit more development happening on it. So just something to keep in the back of your mind. The other one is Drupal. I know a lot of you use Drupal. Drupal out of the box doesn't have support for mobile, but if you install a couple of modules, namely Browse Cap and Switch Theme, and then find yourself a mobile theme, and these are 3 different mobile themes, you just use just one of those, you can have a mobile version of your Drupal site set up fairly quickly. It's not going to be pretty, but it's, if someone's demanding a mobile website and you're using Drupal, you can at least say, yes, we have a mobile site, even though it's ugly. But play around. It doesn't have to be ugly. You'd have to play around with the theme to make it look like, the theme that you're using on your main website. But definitely something that you should consider if you're a Drupal website. And then lastly, this isn't something that's built for education specifically, but the jQuery mobile framework. It's in beta right now, and it allows you to create mobile websites much more easily than trying to do it yourself from scratch. And the nice thing about this is almost all web developers use jQuery for making flashy things happen on your current website. So most web developers are going to be familiar with jQuery. So the learning curve is going to be isn't going to be steep if they go to jQuery mobile. So native apps. Again, you probably don't want to start completely from scratch. And in many cases, you maybe don't want to develop specifically for one platform, because if you, for example, decide you need to develop an iPhone and an Android apps to support your students, you're going to have to spend, X number of dollars on your iPhone app, and then you're going to have to spend probably the same amount on your Android app. But there are a number of toolkits that allow you to develop once and then push out packages for both devices. I'll go over them now, and then we'll talk about some of the pros and cons of doing that at the end. The first one that I'd like to mention is Appcelerator Titanium. I use an app developed by a company using this toolkit that's quite nice, and that's one of the reasons why I'm showing it here first. You do all the development in JavaScript, believe it or not, and then it compiles the JavaScript into Objective-C and Java in order to run natively on iOS and Android. And it runs on iOS, Android, as well as BlackBerry. I believe the BlackBerry is just the new tablet. It doesn't run on the older BlackBerry phone devices, unfortunately. But still, better than trying to target 3 different platforms with 3 different developers. And the application that I use is something called Wunderlist. It's just a list program. I'm sort of a list junkie. And they develop using JavaScript, and they target iPhone, Android, web browser, as well as Mac and Windows desktop, all on basically the same code base. And I discovered this a little while ago. I had a task on my list to put some JavaScript code into, actually it was the little button maker in the mobile website to, click here to have this little pop-up happen. So I just copied the JavaScript code and put it in the note in the thing here. And all of a sudden crazy things started happening in this web application because it was executing the JavaScript. I figured out what was going on after about an hour. I submitted a bug report and they had it fixed in a week or so. But again, you can develop for a lot of different platforms with a few limitations that we'll talk about in a couple minutes. Probably the oldest cross-platform developer would be PhoneGap. Again, you program in JavaScript and HTML5, and it creates native apps across the widest variety of platforms. You've got iOS, Android, BlackBerry, Windows Phone, Web OS. I believe they also support Symbian. But it's not as simple as writing and then having it work perfectly across all those devices. You're probably not going to be able to read this very well at the back, but each device supports different things. So you develop your application, but you've got to realize that, for example, the top item is accelerometer. If you're using the accelerometer, it's not going to work on one of the BlackBerry versions. The compass isn't going to work on BlackBerry, Palm, Windows 7, or Symbian. So that's something to take into account if you're doing a little bit fancier type things, that if you use PhoneGap, it will create native apps across a wide variety of devices, but the functionality supported by those devices isn't consistent. And this is a slide that I just added a couple days ago. Adobe Flash Builder and Flex. I guess they've been able to target mobile devices for a while, but Apple blocked Adobe for a little while, and now they've come back and are able to recompile things to work on iPhones and iOS devices. You can do your programming in Flash, which would be something you'd want to consider if you've got a Flash developer in-house. So if you have someone already doing Flash, you'd want to take a hard look at Flash Builder and the Flex framework. And it creates native apps for iOS, Android, and the BlackBerry tablet. I don't believe it does for the older BlackBerry phones. And then lastly, there's the Corona SDK. It uses a language that I'd never heard of before called Lua. And it supports just iOS and Android, and it seems fairly heavily game focused. So if you're wanting to do things with graphics and accelerated graphics and gaming, maybe you're doing a game for, I don't know, scavenger hunt around your law library or something, this might be something to consider. So here's just a quick table to show you the different devices that each of these frameworks target and support. So just my last thoughts on this. Cross-platform is wonderful in theory, but in practice, the apps tend to be a little bit slower than something written natively for the iPhone or Android. For most of the things that we'd probably be doing in an academic setting, it probably isn't a huge deal, but it is something to keep in mind. So choices, choices, choices. What did we do at our school? You probably guessed already. We've started off developing a mobile website. It was the quickest and easiest way to get a mobile presence. And probably the only thing that's really tempting to me personally, tempting me to try to develop a native app would be to have an integrated QR code reader. I'm not sure whether that's a good enough reason that I'd be able to pry money from our financial officer or not, but We'll probably find out this fall if that's something that she sees as important as well. We used the mobile web OSP, and we targeted the low-hanging fruit, the easiest things to develop that probably we felt would give the most bang for the buck from our students. So, for example, we have our hours of service as well as mapping built in, which was a functionality that was built into the MIT Mobile Framework. So you click on the building or the organization, it gives you the hours of the different services provided, in this case the library, and if you click on the service, you can find out where on campus that service is provided. And you can, if you're new to campus, you can say, show me directions to get there, and it'll give you a nice map of how to get there. Another app that's been that the students have loved for our main library is finding out where computers are available on campus. Most of them do have laptops. A lot of them tend not to bring them every day. So if they're looking for an open computer on campus to use, they can just go here. They can see which labs and which buildings have computers available for them. And the other one that has been a big hit with students is being able to find out what study rooms are available and then being able to book them online or book them from their iPhone. So they don't have to sprint from their classroom to the library to book it. They can just do it, walk over, get the key and go in. The last one, I don't know how much the students use this, but the staff loved the access to the news. And it took me 5 minutes to do, so I was happy to make that concession to our library staff. We also had something that was developed before I started on the project, so people could look up their find information, see which books they had they'd reserved. It's something that we're going to port over to the web app. I just haven't had the time to do it yet. So it's a work in progress. Are there any comments or questions? Yeah.
Do you have any security concerns with the web apps as opposed to more standard applications? As far as like financial stuff, if you're going to do a credit card purchase.
Yeah. No, that's a very good question. Most of the time, we're using the same processes that our main website is using. So, for example, we don't process any of our credit card information internally. Yeah, we're going through a third-party provider who also has a...
That's what I was going to ask. They also have a mobile...
Yeah, they've got a mobile... So we just pointed at the mobile face of their service, and then, hopefully they don't get hacked.
They don't have security concerns.
Yeah. No, that's a good question, though. And in terms of... like directory information, again, we're just hooking into services that are already available, that have already had the security aspect looked at pretty hard. So we're not capturing any information on our side. It's all being handled on the server end pretty much.
We do some things using a secure Cisco VPN, secure connect. But, I don't know. Do you know if there's availability for something like that in mobile?
I have heard of some VPN clients. I've never used one for myself. We typically we try to use HTTPS, just because the VPN clients, in my experience anyways, haven't been very user friendly. And
you're right, they're not.
yeah,
They're good security.
no, very secure once they're up and running, but not so easy on the IT staff in terms of supporting. Yeah. Does anyone have a mobile website up and running already? A couple people. Do you know what you guys used, or did you just build from scratch?
We're just doing HTML5 and just straight JavaScript, CSS.
Is it a mirror image of your main website, or you've just sort of picked specific things that made most sense? Yeah, I think that's pretty common. Yeah. Yeah.
Did decide to duplicate their entire regular web on their mobile site, and it's extremely clunky.
Yeah.
There's just so much stuff there that works through it.
Well, and even me personally, as I use my phone, there are some sorts of things that make sense to do on my phone, and other things that make a lot more sense to just put it off till I've got a desktop or a laptop in front of me to work with. And then vice versa, other things I really don't do on there that I do on my mobile device. Yeah. Sorry, I clicked. Oh, okay.
Because there's a lot of great themes that are designed for mobile already, and then we didn't have to think about the design at all. We could just get out a beta site fairly quickly in terms of what content and services do we want to do. And there's plugins that allow you to do things like Google Maps locations, directions, that people can use their Wi-Fi location or whatever to figure out how to get where we are.
Yeah, that's a great point. WordPress actually is probably the easiest. You're right, the easiest way just to get up and running. There's just one plugin or module that you have to install, and it just magically works.
Like a site that's like 4 pages or something, hours, location, contacts, stuff like that. We put the Google Map plugin on the location page, and we're like, okay, that took us one day to think about it.
A good Friday afternoon project. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so you mentioned the HTML5 for the web. I know that with like iOS, big into some I guess is the video support and things like that. But why particularly is that? Like, what particular elements or features of HTML5 make it better for say web development?
Yeah. So, for example, that's a very good question. Like I mentioned that if you create the shortcut on your home page for your web app, when you click on that on your Android or iPhone, you lose your forward and back arrows on the bottom. And HTML5 has some very nice transitions. So if you build your own navigation up top, which the jQuery mobile will do for you, it'll do nice little page flips and slide in, slide out. So it really does look like a native app with those types of transitions. And that's what you don't get with HTML4. It isn't necessary, but it makes it look a lot more professionally built and makes it look like an application, a lot more like an application.
Because it works better with jQuery mobile for some of that functionality, I guess?
Yeah. And jQuery mobile actually will degrade nicely depending on your device. So if, for example, my son has a BlackBerry device, and the web browser on the BlackBerry phones are god-awful. They're horrible. But jQuery mobile detects the device, and then it'll dumb things down. So it won't try to do the page flip anymore. It knows that it just does a straight back and looks more like a web browser. But it's nice that you don't have to do that yourself. It does a lot of the utility work. And if it supports HTML5, it'll look pretty, lots of eye candy to make it look like a native application. But if it's on an older device, it'll still work and won't die on you or won't blow up on you.
Yeah, and also ask, I guess, as well, do you use any of the features like some of the format that's used in HTML5 that are specific for mobile devices? Have you looking or use any of those, like, for example, the telephone app, you will bring up the number tag,
Yeah.
form, things like that?
Yeah, no, you definitely use that. We've got our, I think it's our Ask Us page, and on there we've got, our reference desk, circulation desk. We've got campus security. We've got SMS to our reference desk, and it's so much easier than trying to dial it. You just go there, you click on it, your phone opens up, and it's ringing for you. So it's very nice for phone numbers. And if you're familiar with HTML, you just put tel : the phone number instead of href. No, hold it. Sorry. Instead of HTTP, you put in tel : and then the number, sort of like the mail to in an anchor tag. Yeah, I probably screwed that up, but I think you know what I mean. Someone else? Oh, I'm sorry. It's too wide.
For the QR application, do you have a specific framework in mind for that? Does something exist? Because QR is kind of fickle from one
Yeah.
place to the
I haven't looked into it that far. It just looks really sexy to me. And one thing that I would like to do initially is we've got QR codes on our study rooms. So if a student goes up there, it's occupied, they can just take a picture of it, and it takes them to the web page so they can see, when it's booked till. So if they want to, book it later, they can do that. Oh, good idea, or great minds think alike, or something like that. But it's something that the students like because they're always battling for these group study rooms. So being able to go to a room and book it right there without having to flip open their laptop and type in.
The QR code thing seemed a little theoretical to me until we came up with that use case scenario. It's been very well received.
Yeah. And giving them access to, like if you've got maybe some event posters around or something that they need to sign up to is another one. Let's say there's a little mini conference or something. You can have a poster up there with a QR code in the corner. They take a picture of it. It takes them to an information page or a sign-up page. They just fill it out and they're signed up before they've walked 10 paces away.
You're seeing it more and more in the subway signage.
Yeah.
At least in New York City, Metro DC.
Yeah. Did you have another question or? Yeah.
I was going to ask about, I'll ask a little later in more detail, but you guys do something like, because I'm really interested in HTML5, how it maps over to some of the mobile device, especially with iPhone, like supporting the video tag.
Yeah.
And if you exclude any of that, like those features.
No, we haven't, but CALI has. They've, I don't know if you've seen, they're publishing some posters with QR codes that are linked to, I believe they're MP3 files, but you could do it with video just as easy to YouTube video. So they've got information about something legal related. I'm not a lawyer, unfortunately, but they've got, does anyone remember one of their posters, what it was on, a topic? ALR?
What they're thinking of is as students are wandering around in the library, there are standardized texts that every library collection would have. And you usually have library tours, but the student doesn't remember how to use this giant set of materials that's in front of them. They just know they're supposed to do something with it. They could see that sign on the end of the post, take a picture of it, and it would load an audio recording that the library can customize to match their collection.
Yeah, and CALI's created, I think, 3 or 4 of them already. So you could just print out this poster, and it just downloads that MP3 file over the internet. Hopefully they've got headphones that they can plug in because they're going to get someone angry if they just play it through the audio on their phone. And then at that point of service, they can get information about that. And I know some libraries use it for using YouTube videos, so they could get some video as well. Yeah.
You find that you're responding to demand, or is this just you're early and you're getting enthusiastic adoption?
A little bit of both. Some of it has been students that sort of are on the cutting edge, not so much from faculty and staff, but students and a little bit me seeing things that are going on at other institutions. But like was said here, QR codes are starting to pop up, out in the wild, and as more people become familiar with them and start using them, I think it's a nice way to provide a service at the point of interaction without them having to run around and track someone down to ask the reference librarian or go back to their laptop to get information there. They can just get it on their phone, hopefully in a format that makes sense for them, whether it be text or audio or video.
Another way I've seen QR codes used, and I don't remember exactly what the website is, but I've seen Google. There's a website that allows you to create a personal QR code that goes to a page where you can enter all your contact information.
Oh, yeah.
And link to any social profiles you want to. So the idea is if you had a sticker like that and you wanted people to be able to contact you really quickly, and you don't want to give out a business card because people don't actually want to have to type that stuff in.
Yeah.
Or they just don't have time to do that. It's kind of like that idea that they had with the iPhones phone thing.
Yeah. No, that's an excellent point. You can put a URL in it. You can put contact information. You can also put a phone number. So if you want to make it easy for them just to, call a phone, they can take a picture of it. It'll pop up the phone number and they hit dial in there.
Once you do that, I know a good tattoo artist would be happy to
Well, I've got a personal sort of business card with my own QR code on it. So if you're interested, I can show that to you after. Well, if there's no other questions or comments, thank you very much.
Phone?
Yeah.
This is a BlackBerry.
Yeah.
I went to is this your law library here?
It's the main law website.
Okay, so how do I get to your mobile version?
It's here, I'll do it for you.
So it's kind of a related question. That then when the user hits that, can it tell that it's a mobile device that's been used to browse it and then bring up that automatically, or does the user have to?
We've done a soft launch. Actually, can you get me to a URL because it doesn't do the? Oh, I better turn this off.